Hey everyone, welcome to the Human Cloud Pod. So today we have Chris Perkins. Chris is the president at Model B. Now, we found out about Model B a couple months ago, and our heads exploded in terms of their ability to capitalize on the highly specialized expertise of freelance and fractional and independent creatives while maintaining the management and the actual execution structure to be able to accomplish marketing and brand projects at scale. So we're not talking, hey, let's get one PowerPoint done. We're not talking, hey, let's even do one campaign. We're talking about how do we take your brand and how do we take your marketing department and fundamentally transform it in a way that only flexible talent can. Literally, it takes the good of flexible talent with the good of an agency / a hierarchical structure. And the way they do this is they have a very unique collectives approach. So in this episode, you're going to learn about this collectives approach. You're also going to go inside the brain of marketing and brand and why it's so important with actual ROIs. So I'm not going to lie. I started in Silicon Valley where people would brag about not spending $1 on marketing. Now, I think that there was a time where that did work, but that's not it anymore. Brand is an integral piece for every single company, whether you're building an app, you're building a platform, you have a physical business. Brand is literally, I would say, the new tech, the new user experience. And we're going to get into what we mean by brand. Chris is also a total brand veteran in terms of he's not going to regurgitate academic textbooks or he's not going to regurgitate things that he thought about last month. He's going to go over 20 plus years of actual practical expertise. And we're going to dive into good brands and what make really good brands. So I want you to enjoy this episode. I also want you to just fall in love with this concept of collectives and taking the good of flexible talent with the good of hierarchy to create impact at scale. All right, everyone, enjoy the episode. Hey everyone, real quick, before the episode gets started, I want to tell you about what we just shipped. We just shipped the Talent Innovator Index, which is tracking exactly where you, your organization, or your client is on the flexible talent journey. Are you Luddites? Are you stuck in the corporate machine? Or are you a change maker? Or are you a disruptor? It's a simple 4-step questionnaire that takes you under a minute to figure out where you, your organization, or your client is. And I want you to go take it today. All right, enjoy the episode. Chris, thank you for hopping on. Listen, you listeners out there, be ready to learn two things: the world of marketing and what the hell that means, but then also what a future-proofed / forward-thinking platform looks like. Because y'all are doing some crazy things with Model B, Chris, and I'm not even going to tell the listeners what. I'm going to make you tell them. But so, Chris, what would be that generic corporate intro that you would give?
Yeah, Matt, we're a global marketing consultancy, and we start by actually understanding how businesses make money to then think very carefully around where marketing would apply. And then, and only then, we pull in the superpowers of great resources all over the globe that we've built through a collective to get great work done with greater efficiency and focus and ultimate precision.
I love it. Okay, let's do a little bit about you. Then we're going to do about the journey of getting to Model B. But so let's start with tell the audience where you're located right now.
I'm in Kansas City,
Nice.
Kansas.
Nice. Beautiful. And then how the hell did you get to Kansas? And let's go all the way back. Sort of what, because I know you were a communications major, right? And so give us the full journey of looking like me with no glasses to having the executive glasses, right?
Yeah.
Give us the full journey of your career.
No, interestingly, I'm the byproduct of an educator and a therapist, parents. And so I feel like marketing was an inevitable collision of those two fields, right? If we're trying to convince people to take action, you have to teach them about like what products or services do, and then you have to understand how they think about it psychologically, like what's their caveman mind thinking, what are their senses taking in. So definitely that's how that comes to bear, at least in my mind. The It's interesting. I went to Michigan State and was originally an international business major. And as I was registering for my junior classes, having been accepted into the business school, I was like, why am I taking this economics and all these things that don't really matter to me? I know that, the interesting thing is a bachelor's degree, the origin of it is to become an eligible bachelor, right? That's why it's still called a bachelor's degree, which frankly needs to get fixed, but because there's a lot of people that graduate that are not eligible, either men or women, for married life. But I digress.
The teacher history, man. I did not expect this is the least I expected to hear on the pod. This is great.
But anyway, so I actually went to the dean and said, look, I need to take a leave of absence and figure out what I really want to do, and called my parents and said, I just dropped out of school. And they're like, what? And these are, highly educated people that, value education. Every breath of my existence was, you're going to get a degree and you're going to, go do something in the business world. And I spent the next quarter, Michigan State was on the quarter program, so the next quarter shadowing people in companies. And that was, to me, the greatest way to find my path. And literally, I would just call people, and I'd network through the school as well, and the alum association. Like, where could I find people that were out there doing things that I could actually see what it looks like? Because when I, general business administration major, what does that mean? Like nothing, potentially. But it also could mean something really extraordinary if it's in the right environment. But I had this really great guy invite me to the Oldsmobile plant and their office in the Lansing area. And while I was there, he was showing me around to all these departments. And lo and behold, we walked through the marketing department, which was quite small. It wasn't their main marketing, but it was a marketing group, right? It was like there was oxygen. All of a sudden, I was like, okay, there's something here. And I said, hey, can I hang with these folks? And they're like, yeah, sure, get coffee, make copies, whatever. I'm like, fine. I just want to see what's going on here. And about an hour and a half later, while I was there, I was very fortunate that the ad agency folks came in. And they were dressed nicer, like more casually. They like had smiles on the look. The in-house folks, the corporate marketing folks were like really happy to see them, and the oxygen level increased again. So that gave me my first clue of a place where I could be really potentially, like focused for a long term in my career. And sure enough, I then spent the next 2 months dissecting, like, what are all the roles? What are the kinds of agencies? What are the marketing functions, both internally and externally? And that led me down this path that has taken me to 10 states in the US and overseas. And I've done marketing in literally 160 countries and probably 30 plus languages, and been to over 40 countries in my journey. And I feel so blessed because I found the thing I was meant to do, and that I can get up every morning knowing that this is, a great opportunity to like do something more, to add to what I've already done. And, to me, the number of people I know that go to their job to make money and leave it, to live life. And there's that like distinct separation, and I don't have that.
Yeah.
I feel so lucky.
So I have a funny question for you. And literally, like, the theme is, what's the actual purpose of marketing is like really one of the things that I can't wait for our listeners to learn from you. But one of the things that always is funny to me, at least, so someone who started in tech and product, when I looked at marketing, I just assumed, okay, social media, maybe website copy. And then they're like, okay, we need to have ads. Okay, maybe ads. But the distinction between the ad agency world and then the marketing world seems like two separate worlds. And then add in now all of the impact of the digital marketing and the growth marketing. And all of a sudden, marketers kind of look like engineers in some ways, or data science and data analytics. And the CEO in me just goes, this is so confusing. I just want to spend $1 to get $1.10 back. So I want to go with whoever gets me that $1.10 back. But so that is a theme that I wanted to really explore with you, especially because one of the benefits of having this, whatever we want to call it, flexible network, freelance network, independent network, whatever, is you do have the ability to move in ways that others don't. And so, like, if I put a flag down and said, hey, I'm an ad agency today and I'm going to have a bunch of full time employees, what it would take me like 1 to 3 years to change course, just because, oh no, that's a lot of investment into things that I need to keep going down this way. But so, how would you, Chris, how would you define the purpose of marketing, but then also decipher all the various segments? And I love that you say, like, you took 2 weeks to just chop it all up, right? And be like a master sponge and nerd over what is this
Totally.
marketing thing. But yeah, how would you define the purpose in all the various segments?
Well, broadly speaking, marketing is about changing people's minds, quite simply, and that's both for advocates or people that are already using a brand, and beyond. Because if you think of brands in the holistic sense, you want to have, just like with friends, you want to have a additive conversation each time you connect, and the right brands, the ones we all admire, do that. And they do that exceptionally well at any touch point. They think holistically, and it's embedded in their DNA. So the crazy thing is that we have to, just from an organizing principle perspective, create these departments that do sales and product development and engineering and marketing. In the end, the best companies have marketing imbued in all they do, and they think with a marketing first perspective in everything they do, or at least connecting the red thread, so that it's common across the organization, and everybody understands how they're working towards a similar goal of creating a customer experience that's incredibly rich. When it comes to the agency world, and what is an agency versus a marketing company, there are so many titles, and there's, in fact, the marketing world has created all kinds of like proxies and adjacencies and splinter versions of it, and some of them rightfully so, because you really want to be discipline specific or skill set specific. But in the end, it all comes back to, how do you create a better, lower friction, more meaningful experience that's additive over time, around being choiceful in what you choose to do as a consumer, and by putting consumers first and serving their needs and interests, that's ultimately what marketing and advertising collectively is intended to do.
So I love making it as simple as just changing someone's mind,
Yep.
because that encompasses everything from getting them to stop and look at you, to then getting them to read, to then getting them to click something, then getting them to pull their credit card out, right?
Yep.
So changing someone's mind. Now, can we go down the rabbit hole of what is the ROI of brand? And the reason I ask is because, so as part of starting in Silicon Valley in 2016. And I'll give you, like, my bias is, when I started, we were that $22 million rocket ship that just raised from Andreessen, and we had Ashton Kutcher and Michael Jordan. But to be honest, we had zero marketers, and
Yep.
we had one finance and accounting person stuck in the basement. And so I come from a place where marketing was an ick word. And we were always so proud of, like, $0 in marketing. And I wonder what you think of this, but my perspective of sort of what's happened in the business landscape is, there was a time when the tech could speak for itself, and the tech was so transformational that, if we look at a Facebook and we look at Instagram and we look at some of these companies, it didn't really matter what they said, right? Like, it was kind of a self understood massive technology change. But it seems like in the past year, 2 years, that everything is so similar that the brand is that sort of overwhelmingly sort of differentiated value. And that's my view of it, right? And I will say, like, selling into Silicon Valley, still, there is that perception of, I don't want to pay for marketing. I want to pay for product, engineering, sexy tech, right? But I know how important brand is, but so how do you really quantify why I should spend $1 into brand and marketing.
Well, it's one of the classic questions that I think a lot of organizations and marketers, frankly, struggle with. And there's no singular answer to it. The thing I would say is that without question, thinking holistically, full funnel is essential, because it starts with your belief system and your ethos and your values as an organization, and all that informs your culture. If that's not reflected in all you do, then you're missing a huge opportunity. Product advantage, service advantage, marketplace advantage is something that's not sustainable over time. You can hold it for a period of time. You can trademark it or patent it to protect it for whatever period of time you can. But what you can protect is a culture, a belief system, and a go-to-market approach that is something that nobody can match, at least completely. And therefore, we've seen it before. I mean, how many ads have we seen where it's product comparison? You can't even tell. I'm a Coke fan. I mean, I'm a Coke loyalist, and they do the product taste test, and you can't tell which one's Coke. Like, honestly, is that really because of the product, or is it really because of the marketing? And I think that obviously there's certain categories that you could tell, right? If you're a Colgate versus Crest person or whatever, you pretty discernible difference in the product there. But even then, from a functional perspective and from a features and benefits perspective, all that rational stuff is what we use as consumers to create order around our decision making and make us feel good about it. In the end, we're buying based on our emotional context and the way it fits in the world, much more so than the rational stuff in most cases. I mean, obviously, certain products have to serve a functional benefit or some utility, and if they don't, that's a disappointment. And that's where a lot of marketing gets it wrong. They do, at a macro level, two things I see most marketers do wrong is they tell people what to think instead of honoring their intelligence. And the second thing is that they're inconsistent in what they're promising the product or service can do and what it actually does. I mean, you go to, Verizon's amazing. You're going to have or whatever cellular, doesn't matter. Never, it's always going to work and the stores are great. And then you go and it's like, oh my God, please stop. And that's a big challenge for these organizations to try and improve that when they make those claims. I mean, for years, Ford had this campaign, quality is job one, and I don't think anybody thought they nailed it, right? Like, so why even say it then? Like, shouldn't you do what General Electric said? We bring good things to life, and that did two things: that energized their entire employee base across thousands of diverse companies. We make engines for aircraft, we make light bulbs, we make all these amazing things, and people enjoy how they work in their lives. Great idea. So marketing's, much maligned in part because there's a lot of it that's really bad and not effective and doesn't deliver ROI. And that's frankly part of the joy for us is that, we can, without question in the work that we do, show you where it's going to make a difference and why. And frankly, if it doesn't, we're going to stop it and change to do something different.
And I want to make sure I highlight, I'm going to kind of tease a little bit of your model in terms of when you say we will stop. That what cracks me up about consulting and internal employees is we say things like, oh, if it doesn't work, we'll pivot, right? We're going to look at the data and we'll pivot. But then when you get into the nuts and bolts of how are decisions actually getting made, the reality is the marketing agency is going to stop and pivot after 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, depending on the contract, because they had to resource it. The internal employees mostly are not going to, stand on the spike that then tells them, ooh, we need to pivot away from my skill set, right?
Right.
But you can, because you have this flex network in your model. But before I dig into that, so listeners, I'm just kind of teasing you of what you're going to hear, after this segment. Let's discuss some success stories. And they can be success stories just in general. They can be success stories from Model B. But what are some really, really, really good brands And I know when we talked prior, I told you about John Deere, right? Which to me is like a good brand. Don't know if they did it right, but worked for me. But what would you say, either in general or Model B? What are some good examples of brand that we can look at and be like, we want to be like them?
Wow, that's a good one. I think that there's lots of good examples, but even they have flaws. Like I'll give you an example: Progressive Insurance. I think they've done a great job of creating an entertainment model that says that we know that insurance is serious, but we're going to make fun of ourselves, not you, the consumer, and we're gonna have fun doing it and invite you in to relate to our brand, and that's our culture. And so and I think that they have reasonable continuity of that whenever you go anywhere in their kind of digital experience, or work with that. When you call their center, you get people that are going to feel like that. They're not going to be silly and making jokes, stuff like that, but you feel a sense of connection to the idea. um, Whereas I think some of the other brands, they get it a bit wrong in that they make fun of the consumer. Liberty Mutual, Liberty Bibberty, and I feel like in some cases they make fun of the consumer, and it's a real shame. Like, definitely consumers are goofs, but do you really want to make fun of the people that you're trying to invite in to relate to your brand? And so I think there's I think another example of a really positive brand out there. I think the way that Airbnb has elevated and invited people to take a non-traditional approach to staying somewhere, and to create value proposition in their brand and their culture, and to do that really really seamlessly, and to take friction out of the equation, which is something that we obsess about. The experience is really great. They require that you provide decent content, that you get rated by past guests. All those things add up to really positive understanding of what to expect. So you come into the experience aligned with what you're probably going to experience, in reality, in every touch point. And that's a great example of a brand doing it really right. And I think as a disruptive model, which they are globally, they've done a really great job of maintaining, um, control or presence and dominance really around that property share model. And even slicing and dicing it, now you can get hotel rooms through there, which is crazy. So it's really, I think, a smart model, and one that is a proof that they believe in marketing and brand through the line.
So I'm going to ask you sort of what has to go right to have a good brand, and if we can even try to get as detailed and tactical as what does the resourcing look like, what does the role slash skill set needed look like. So I want to get as detailed as possible in that. Before I want to throw a crazy idea your way, and in hearing you talk about brand, what I'm actually hearing is, remember a couple months ago, the founder mode, when it kept getting thrown around of like, we need to be in founder mode, we need to be in founder mode. So I still don't really know what people meant by it, but I know for me personally, what it means is that the leader at the top is just obsessed with the company and will do anything to make sure that it works. And usually anything means that they are literally the most aligned with the customer. They're most aligned with the emotional, value. They understand every single feature. They just don't let anything kind of go away. Where when part of what you're talking about is like, hey, that user experience needs to line up with the messaging, needs to line up with the actual UI UX,
Yep.
and that's more than brand, right? And
Oh
so
boy,
to
yeah, it's
me,
everything.
that sounds like founder mode. And the last thing I want to throw your way is, when looking at how to build your company, one of the hardest things is who to hire, right? That's just obviously one of our hardest things. What is the hardest thing to get is buy-in, loyalty, and people who give a shit about
Yep.
your product, your service, and your customer. But if you look at the independent workforce, they inherently give a shit about the product, service, and customer base because they are so specialized. So I just want to throw it out there that I think one of the big learnings I'm already having is brand kind of sounds like founder mode. And
Yep.
founder mode is most aligned when the people are working for themselves because they have the most buy-in. But before whatever, you can either respond to that or we can
Yep.
get very tactical in terms of what do you need to do to have a good brand.
No, I'll actually connect it all together because it all starts with the leadership of whatever organization, regardless of their age, size, state, relative success, or position in the market. If the leadership doesn't all share the common view of the things that matter to the consumers they serve and ways to prioritize that, then ultimately they'll be leaving money on the table. And one of the things I'd love to see is more analysts, when they do in their investor calls or calls with the street, asking questions like, what are you doing to improve customer experience? What are you doing to understand because consumers change their views today faster than ever. I mean, they have, these wonderful AI tools that allow them to find answers that are active answers versus passive answers like the old Google search. I mean, so we can make decisions so much more precisely as consumers. And so brands need to be thinking much more holistically. Every touch point is exponentially changing over time. And the leaders that are functional leaders need to be thinking about what they can do to empower their team to deliver really rich and compelling experiences. And the beauty is when you do that, everybody on your team internally feels great. Like the worst thing in the world for a BDR or somebody in the ecosystem is to have to answer, I don't I understand that this is the answer I'm limited to giving you because of my role in this, that I'm this small cog in the system. And yet when you get to these companies where the people are empowered to actually solve your problem or to proactively say to you, I can't, but I'm going to work to try to, and here's how I'm going to do that. And I'll follow up with you. And we all have had those experiences, whether it's a bad dining experience, a bad hotel experience, a bad, auto repair service. When they make the difference happen real time because they're empowered and they're vested in creating a good experience, that is brand coming to life real time. So ads, one of the big problems is most companies rely on ads to create that belief system that isn't there in reality. And so when brands are really successful, everybody in the leadership team owns responsibility for making sure that experience is rich. So now I'm going to talk about founders that being founder minded. The best, any company of any size should share that ethos of we're a startup and we're one bad quarter away from a problem we can't solve. Otherwise, you're not looking to the future and you're not, you're resting on your laurels and you're just building on what is a system of infrastructure that is going to have to innovate at some point. And so, the beauty of a flex talent model or a freelance talent model or an open talent model, whatever you want to call it, is the people are their own brands of them, of their skill set. And so when you tap them, they're inherently motivated and skilled and capable and compelled to do great work for you. If you set up the right kind of rails for understanding, identifying, sourcing them and arming them with what they need to do what they do exceedingly well. And that's where a lot of it breaks down, right? When you use a flexible talent model, if you don't take the friction out of how you collaborate, how you manage expectations, how you brief them, like there's nothing worse than throwing somebody in the deep end and not giving them what they need to succeed. And that happens for full-time employees as well as scalable resources. And that is the death of so many organizations is looking back at what they used to do and counting on it working in the future versus actually adapting to, like, Matthew, tell me, like, what can I give you? You're really good at this thing, X, Y, and Z. What can I give you to make you, like, your superpowers come to life? And that, interestingly, is the kind of marketing we at Model B love to do, is when we can open up that energy that people all have in them inherently. It's innate, right? We all want to do something good in the world. Opening us up to that is the superpower that we try and make happen through our collective.
So here's a funny question for you. So, is there a shared brand of the best freelancers or the best fractional marketers or the best? Because my assumption, and I've been looking at data on who are freelancers, what do they care about, how large is it, where are they? And I will say when you look from the outside, you start. What's the saying where it's like if you think you're smart, you're not smart. If you think you're not smart, you're smart. Like the closer you look, the realize you don't know. But one of the patterns that I swear is there on the best freelancers. So I'm talking about the top 1%. They're always booked. They're usually making between 200 and a million a year, but whatever. So I do think a shared brand is that those individuals would be the best CEO, but have realized that they can be a better CEO by being a freelancer because they can move quicker, they can have a quicker path to impact, and they usually they're the more ambitious type in corporate usually. I don't know the nice way to say it, Chris, but what do you notice? Do you notice any like shared brands of the best freelancers?
I'm not sure I understand the concept of shared brand. What I would say is that there's definitely an emerging population of people that are much more comfortable owning their superpower and flexing it and being accessible and identified as really good at it and being demanding in a positive way of ways to get the most out of it. And it's it and they're less adverse towards what used to be called competition or conflict of interest, or the typical guardrails that corporate America put up to kind of structure and defend all kinds of IP and privacy and all this other stuff. So I think the best and brightest are flexing their way into being very surgical and precise in what they do, and frankly not wanting to get caught up in the bureaucracy or rinse and repeat nature of what a lot of kind of FTE based roles tend to be. And again, there are certain things that you have to do repetitively, right? There are certain things that will always require that, and that's great. So part of it is really being thoughtful about deconstructing outcome based objectives and then resourcing them in really interesting ways, and not always relying on what you used to do as the best path, and letting those super powered skilled people guide you on that, because inevitably they've got clues that you haven't even thought of because they've done it in 12 other companies that are so different than you. And why wouldn't you want to benefit from that?
Yeah. And there's a higher chance that they will tell you the truth
Yeah,
because even if you don't like it, they still have a pipeline of other clients versus, oh no, I need to say the right thing because this is my job, right? Because this is what paying the healthcare and the kids' tuition. Um, now let's get into, so I trust you, right? I now understand that I have to put a dollar towards brand. It's going to be funny, Chris. I'm actually going to ask you a very tactical question quickly. What is the minimum viable investment to have a good brand? Is it 10,000? Is it 20,000? Is it 150,000? Is it 10 a month? Is it 30? This is a very, very specific question, but I know it's what a lot of our listeners and executives are thinking. So, what would you say is the minimum viable investment to have a good brand?
it's a great question. We get that a lot from different life stage companies and particularly startups. Honestly, it's not about budget. It's about being discreet about putting your customers first in everything you do and every touch point, because and yes, that costs money, but honestly, when we're advising companies, one of the first things we focus on is what are they telling themselves? What are they telling everybody across the organization, so that when they're out in the world, they can say with pride and clarity, I work for company X. This is what we do. Here's the benefit to the people that we are trying to, encourage to buy our products or services. And, there's a way to do that, right? It's literally not as black and white as what I just said, but like, what is that? I like to think of it as the cocktail party story, right? So if you walk into a cocktail party The thing you don't do that most advertisers do is they walk in and say, buy one, get one free. And you're like, who the hell is this guy? Like, get out of here, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Instead, why wouldn't you come in and say, I'm company X? Oh, hi, nice to meet you. What do you do? Like, what does company X do? And if they're not interested, then fine, that's okay, right? Because one of the things that's a myth is to think you can convince everybody to love your, product or solution, your brand. You can't. And it's a fool's mission to try. Instead, you should actually try and find the people that are the best customers and compel them to relate to you in a way that's very positive, and then arm them. So this is the minimum investment. Arm everybody in your team and every customer you touch with the ability to tell something positive about the experience that they have or will deliver sequentially and progressively as they have, more and more experiences. That's the minimum investment. Yes, that could be equated to dollars, but it's not a media budget. It's not a ad production budget. It's not a digital spend. It's ultimately being thoughtful about everything you do and every touch point, and being discreet about that. Because you think about these early startups, they don't spend any money on marketing in most cases. But if they don't come up with a name and an ethos and a belief system and a culture that reflects how they're going to bring to life a positive customer experience, they're setting themselves up to fail from the onset, even if they have something incredibly disruptive.
Yeah, yeah. So that actually, it's a really interesting way to think about it. Now, God damn you, Chris, because now I'm going to go back to our team and be like, hey guys, give the pitch. You're stuck in a cocktail. I think I call it the T-shirt test, but the cocktail party test as well, which is like, hey, if this person were, even if they're an intern, right? Intern works for you, has your T-shirt on at a party, and someone asks, "What do you do?" Can they say yes? Is your message simple? So I love that test. Now, getting into the execution. So this is where I hear you, right? I hear you that it's about changing a mindset and it's about identifying. So actually, one thing that you said, that I was listening to a podcast from Gary Tan earlier in the week,
Mm.
and he said this really good thing that I was like, oh wow, that's make sure I remember that. He said the best founders, when there's 100 boxes, their mission is to flip 100 of those boxes as fast as possible and identify the one box that likes you, and then love that box. Whereas first time founders try to go to every single box. They tiptoe, right? And they're like, hey, let me tell you about this awesome thing I have. And then they feel all sad when no one's interested. But the best founders know, please reject me as fast as possible. Tell me why, so I can go on to the next box. But getting into the execution of a good brand. So let's say that we're at stage one. We'll say we're a beloved credit card brand, but we know that our customers are going away pretty quick because we have new wallet solutions like AirTM. We have all these new gadgets like Robinhood that I should put all my money in, whatever. But so let's say we're that type of profile, and I meet you at a bar, right, or at a library. You and I, Chris, are probably, to be honest, at a coffee shop. It's probably where we'd probably meet. But let's say we meet, and I say, all right, this is all making sense, right? But now what do I do next? And educate me on what most leaders do, yet what I should do. And this is kind of getting into, Chris, why'd you guys start Model B? Right? Like, you'd be in this brand and marketing game no matter what, but you started Model B. And so I guess a good place to start might be, tell us everything you can about Model B. Tell us why. Tell us the actual delivery method. Yeah, give us, please, just brag as much as possible at Model B.
Well, certainly proud of what we're doing. What's interesting is that because there's so many agencies that are, marketing advertising agencies out there, one of the things that I've come to is that, there's this obsession with having some distinct and unique proposition that nobody else has. Which, let me just start by saying that is a complete fool's errand. With literally, depending on which data you look at, between 35 and 135,000 in the US alone advertising agencies. Okay. So the threshold for starting one is very low. You can create a website and in 2 hours with Wix, you're live, and you're an ad agency. The key is, what do you do and where do you fit in the ecosystem of optionality there? And so, we are at our core a growth marketing agency. My test for any positioning is to ask, as opposed to what, right? We're not, obviously, there's no agencies out there that say that they're anti-growth. That would be illogical. But the problem is, from a buyer's perspective, and this is where we start with every client, who are the people you're trying to compel? The number one priority of everybody that we work with is growth. So we are a growth marketing consultancy, and our business model is purpose built to support the lowest friction, highest precision resourcing of super talent that delivers the highest growth quotient for every action taken. So let me unpack that a little bit. Our core team's about 12 people. They're a mixture of account managements, marketing, experts with a management consulting mindset. Again, by understanding how businesses make money and what all we actually do ecosystem maps to understand, what's their partnership model? What's their, is it a 3-step distribution or a 5-step distribution? Are they dependent on natural resources that are coming from international markets? What are all those things that affect their ability to be successful in the ecosystem that they work in? And then how do they actually manage that? How do they prioritize that? What are the friction points there? An example, we worked with a vet clinic brand that was PE backed. It was actually the talent group was hiring people based on the founder's belief system. They'd sold, the founder wasn't involved anymore. That wasn't what was the experience day to day. So people come into the place going, I love this. This is great. And then go, wait, where's this experience that the founder started? It's gone. Where is it? So we refocused what it was that, in that, kind of iteration of the company in their life stage. The talent team, everybody they hired all of a sudden was like, wow, this is what you said it would be. This is great. I came in so is that marketing? No. Is it marketing? Absolutely. If it's done right, if you're affecting their business in a positive way, it's absolutely marketing. So the way that we go about actually crafting this, we work with any client, we do an ecosystem map. We understand carefully where their marketing is working now, what's not working. And then we also dive into what they should try next. And we put a hierarchy of prioritization into that in a roadmap. And then we go into our collective, we call the Partner Collective, has over 60 agencies around the world and literally thousands of individual experts. And we're able to tap very precise skill sets. We build that roadmap into what we call a success plan. The success plan has components that we, based on our base experience, think are the right kind of tactical channels to start thinking in. And we tap those experts. They make it better because they know more than we do, like exponentially more than we do. And they know the absolute latest ideas that, in the latest things. And a lot of times they bring category experience and global knowledge and experience and market understanding around the buyers and ICPs. And so they enrich the plan, the success plan, around the tactics that they're involved in. And our job is super integrator. So our job is to make sure they get briefed really well, that they understand what the budget is and the timetable and what's expected of them, and we get out of their way. We also never white label them because we want the superpower that they've got to come through as a part of their brand ID. And that's ultimately the Model B model, and that's what gives us the distinction in the marketplace. And frankly, I think helps us compete against the large kind of legacy agency models that are struggling under their own weight from an FTE basis.
So let me ask you 2 questions. And the first question is very simple, but probably with a longer answer. And that is, why would you not just go be a full-time employee at your client? So when the client's looking, why would they not just say, okay, Chris, we want to hire you as head of growth. Your salary is 350 and your budget is 20 million. Go nuts. So that's one thing. So why not as a full-time employee? Second, why didn't you go, okay, I'll go lead an agency, right? You go be president at any marketing and ad agency you want. So why wouldn't you go do that? And then third is literally just quantifying the benefits that you've seen. But so why not a full-time employee? Why not just go be a president at an agency? Yeah, I can't wait to hear your answer.
Well, the first two I can answer both through the lens of my needs and also what Model B has become. And that is quite simple. I've been on the client side. I managed a $200 million budget. I was the CMO, actually the first CMO for Brand USA, the tourism entity. Our job was to invite the world to the U.S. to spend their hard-earned money
Cool.
and visit the United States. So it was absolutely a dream job to get to be the first leader of the marketing for the country. We'd never done it before, way behind in actually doing it compared to New Zealand or Australia or the UK. They'd had programs for years and very successful programs. And I loved it. But one of the things I need personally is I intellectually need the stimulation of lots of different problems to solve and lots of different opportunities to do things that are interesting and unique. And I know myself when I'm in a situation where when you're working, Brand USA is huge, big opportunity, lots of diversity in what we offer here, lots of complexity in that you're representing everything and you're selling everything, but not anything technically because you don't book anything, right? You
Yeah.
send them to the actual experiences to do all the final booking. But even that, it reached its point of like, I'd done the hardest parts and I'm starting to see this become a pattern. Whereas what I get to do at Model B, one call is a cybersecurity call. The next call is helping managed care pharmacists through their trade association get more value out of the association. The next call, it's helping a fintech brand that's scaling really rapidly relate to banks that are looking for a better platform for loan management. The way that my brain has to flex is a lot more fun, and frankly, empowering the team and getting the superpowers of all our great people together to do great work is the real thing that compels me. So we actually in some cases have fractional CMOs or fractional staff that will embed
Yeah.
in client organizations because they need that for a period of time. And again, it's all about precision of talent, taking the friction out of the equation so that we can do more to greater effect and drive that growth that we promised. So that's ultimately it. And quantifying it, man, there's lots of ways to do that. I think whether it be stock price, having the team, even if they don't recognize it, having the team that's in the leadership group have the ability to reflect on the marketing that's being done in their earnings calls. And they're not talking about it from a CMO's perspective. They're talking about it from a business perspective. But to me, that's the ultimate value equation, right? If you're giving them a way to reflect it without it being an ad or something that's super tactical, then it becomes part of the ethos. And those are the most successful companies is when it's imbued in everything they do and every touch point, every leader is, very comfortable in reflecting on it.
Let me ask you. Let me be a very very. I wish I could say that this still wasn't the case, but this actually still is very common from what we see. So I hear that, and I hear you tell me about a fractional CMO that you'll plug in. What about the buy-in, Chris? What about the loyalty? What about the 15 plus years of blood, sweat, and tears and the whole, my father worked here, my mother worked here. Is that just gone? Is that still here, but it's actually now better in a fractional model? Tell me about this buy-in. Why does some executives still feel like if they're not my employee, then there's not the buy-in?
I think it's the same thing with return to office. mandates. There's people that are addicted to what they know and feel comfortable with, and they feel is the requirement to deliver good work. And look, there's plenty of room in the world for all those flavors. What we prefer and what we try and enable is the ability for people's unique abilities to thrive in whatever shape or form. And there are many of our clients that do have folks that have been there for a long time and are really happy being there for a long time, and frankly, and maybe even passed on promotions because they didn't want to move past the ability to control the ecosystem that they're really, or the part of the role that they're really focused on. Godspeed. I do think that people are realizing that it's okay to let that go more so than they ever have before, and to be a solopreneur, if you will, and to have a personal brand versus a corporate brand. And there's the room for that is starting to mature in a way that is really great to see, because that gives you, in our view anyway, it gives you access, many more points of light to superpowers. And even within individual levels, right? It also gives you the flexibility to live life, both in terms of where you choose to live, but when you need to take time off for whatever reason, right? Because you want to recharge, you want to write a book. I don't care. Like the ability to be super great at what you are. I think the parameters around that are changing, and people, even universities and programs at the academic level, are starting to say, "Hey, here's how you could do this in a way that's really good." And the organization and the academic programs that don't do that are frankly going to get left behind, because the majority of roles, I think, are going to move towards this over time.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Listen, my last question for you is you all are the kings and queens of friction and getting rid of friction. And so I intentionally, you listeners, I'm not going to let Chris tell you the full solution because you're going to have to go reach out to him. But if you could dangle and tease us with what are the top three friction points that you see across your clients, and a little light in the tunnel, but you listeners, very intentionally, he's not going to tell you at all because you better go reach out to him. Because what would you say are the top friction points that you deal with?
The number one, without question, is senior leadership thinking they're on the same page. One of the exercises I often do with senior leaders, especially when a CEO or senior exec says, "Oh, we've worked together for 23 years. We know we can finish each other's sentences." I literally say to them, "Good. Here's a index card. Everybody take it, and I want you to write the in order the top three priorities for the next quarter. I want you to write those down." Inevitably, they miss the mark, and they'll have them in the wrong order. They'll have the wrong language. They'll have it through the lens of their department or functional area. And to some degree, that's expected. So that's a little bit of a trap. But in the end, what we often do to minimize that friction is to do frequent workshops where we get those leaders together to problem solve and close those gaps, to bring uniform language and belief systems together, to get them empowered to understand how that individually they're able to contribute towards something they collectively are building. It's amazing. If you don't do that, you lose focus almost overnight. It's astounding. So that's one of the areas that we find a lot of opportunity, and that it also cures a lot of cultural cancers, right? It gives people a voice. You can find the outliers. You can figure out where there's dysfunction, and the leadership can also make some tuning in who does what, and in some cases they even move people out if they're not bought into what's being built and what the vision from the ultimate, because in the end somebody's got to be accountable for the answer of what we're building. So that's one thing. The other thing that we do is we have a platform for tapping the talent and resourcing it. We invite everybody in our collective, the partner collective, to self-identify their superpowers. And we're vigilant about pushing them to really be clear. You can't have more than three. Because if you have more than three, you're lying. Nobody's got that. Like, I mean, and honestly, there are some that might have a whole layer of good powers that are the kinds of things you need to turn to occasionally. And it's good to know those, but we want those documented so that when we tap somebody, we're getting somebody that's really super ready to do what they say they're capable of doing. So that's like the second thing. And then the third thing is, stopping thinking what we did yesterday is the answer to what we're going to do tomorrow. And really, like, AI tools is a great example. We frequently get clients that say, all these damn tools, I can't get any value out of them. It's, all my people are, playing around with them, wasting all this time. And they're right. How do you cut the line on that? And then also, how do you step back and say, okay, this tool is known for doing the following. How do I build process around that? Instead of saying, here's our process. How can we jam this tool into our broken 72-year-old process that we're calling best practices? The first rule of best practices is probably not going to apply to you. So instead, think every day, carve out 5% of your time and think, what are we doing that we could do differently, better, smarter, more, adopt a more innovative approach? And even to the degree that you would fail at those, take the risk of failing to learn how you could improve and constantly test and learn. If you're not doing that, then you're going to face some degree of atrophy and your relative success over time. So those are the big three I would land on in this conversation. And as you imagine, there's thousands of areas of friction.
And I would add the last one, Chris, is just like you don't want to take a current process and expect new things to fit in, it might mean that rather than going with the same internal full-time employee, you might want someone from the outside to go deploy it and then teach. And that's one thing that since I started freelancing, when I started hiring, it just didn't even come to my brain of like, all right, let me open up headcount for this, right? Like, let me open up headcount and budget and whatever. And it just went straight to like, hey, I think this is my problem. You're smarter at this, right? Okay, can you teach me and execute it as well? And it was like, oh, this is so easy. Like,
well, and half the time they actually make your problem statement better by reframing it, right? I mean, isn't that's in essence what our model works, right? So we do that success plan where we imagine what the problem is, and we go to those superpower based experts, and they go, "What if you looked at it this way? Oh my God, that's brilliant! Bring it on, let's go!"
And that teases the last thing I will tell you, listeners, is this is why when you look at the greater sort of future work as a whole, these specialized platforms, you're seeing them really have their day, and it's not going to stop because it's not as simple as putting your problem statement, whether it's a job rec, whether it's the problem you're having, putting it out to a marketplace and expecting thousands of people to bid. That doesn't work, right? That's not how leadership works. That's not how really successful implementation gets done. You need a you, right, Chris? You need a growth partner for you to go, hey, we're thinking about doing this. And you go, yeah, you're asking the question the wrong way. You have the wrong skills. You have the wrong timelines. I mean, this is why, listeners, if you are thinking about growth and brand and marketing, please go reach out to Chris. So, Chris, last question. Where can our listeners find you and Model B? And, it's funny. You asked me a much better question about the movie. So I'm going to more so ask you if you had to either be a book or a character in a book, who would you be? But where can our listeners find you, my man?
Oh gosh, what book? As a student or a son of a educator, I'm going to get in trouble on this one because there's so many books that I could point to. I guess I'd probably end up being a really good friend of Mark Twain's in one of his books. There's so many that I think there's rich context there, but I'm easily found on LinkedIn. My actual handle there is Topher.Perkins because my full name is Christopher. So the last half of Christopher, my grandmother kindly said, Chris is too unclear about gender, so we're going to call him Topher. And so I went by Topher for a long time, and so I know if somebody from my early days is calling it, they'll call me Topher. But Topher.Perkins or Topher Perkins is the LinkedIn connector there. But I show up as Chris Perkins there, and then modelb.com is our website, and we'd be happy to chat with anybody.
I love it. Well, Topher or Chris, whichever one you want to go by. You just told our listeners a big secret, by the way. If any of you want to go sell to Chris, please don't then take that Topher and act like you're his friend. Actually take him out to coffee first. But listen, Chris, thank you so much for hopping on.
Matt, loved it.